Okay, we're going to go over the finer points of chapter 18. A lot of this is a review that we've covered, of stuff we've covered in class, but I want you to see where it is in the textbook. They bring up some interesting points that we can highlight, and also I want you to be able to do, and be familiar with the kinds of questions that they ask in a textbook like this, because I think they're legitimate things to demonstrate you're able to do fluently, but also because I think that's also something that other teachers and other schools may ask you about if you ever have to demonstrate equivalency. So chapter 18, modulations, it's the first one, using common or diatonic chords. So what this means is we're changing from one key, and remember, changing key is not always the same as modulation. Modulation is when we change where do is. So if we went from C major to C minor, that's not a modulation, that's a change of mode. It is a key change, but it's not a modulation. But if we went from C major to A minor, then do has changed, yes? Or A flat major or whatever, wherever do is has changed. Okay, and then diatonic chords just means using ones that are in the key, normal to the key, right? And we've already talked about this. In short, what happens is if I'm in the key of C and I want to go to the key of G, then I will find some chord in here, and I'm going to be honest, it's most often usually the sixth chord for going to the dominant, and that becomes the 2. So this is a C chord, this is an A minor chord, and you can see that that's 6 in this key, and then that's 2 in that key. And once we've pivoted there, okay, it's sometimes called pivot chord modulation, then we just go on in the key of G, and the smart thing to do at that point is to move quickly towards the exit or cadence, like that, okay? So there we are, all right? I think, and that's what the basis of this is here. Then they try and show you a diagram for how pieces with multiple movements might go. And first movement, we talked about this in class, you're going to start in the home key, of course, 1, right? Eventually you're going to move to the key of 5. Sometimes it happens in the middle and we go a bit, sometimes it's just by the time we get to the end, but 5. And then we have an unstable period here. It's usually trying to get us back. So if you can imagine, let's use Lord of the Rings. We're in the Shire, we go on a trip to different places, but we end up in Mordor, right? And then we have adventures and such trying to get ourselves back, and eventually it comes back to the key in the second half, and then goes out like that, okay? So what's the difference between modulation and tonicization, okay? Remember that tonicization is when we have a 5 of something or 7 of something, and sometimes that can be expanded to be a bubble. So you can have, 5 of 5 in this case would be a D chord as opposed to a D minor chord. So it feels like we're in the key of G, right? And then it'll go to G, which is my 1. But you can expand this out. You can say, well, what would my 4 be? And that would be a C chord. And you could say, well, it's 1 in the old key, but it'll have situations where you can literally, go like 2 of, go 6, and then 5 of 6, and then you can go to the 6th chord, right? Or maybe you do like a not 5-to-1 relationship. You go to the 6 of 6. So it's like a deceptive thing. And at some point you can extract that out and say, hey, we're in the key of 6, or 6. And this is my 2 chord, which is a B half diminished chord, and this is my 5 chord, which is an E chord, and then here's my 6 chord, like that. And we talked about expanding the bubble of that tonicization. And the question is, well, when is it tonicization? When is it just a bubble? And when have we actually changed key? And the book rightly says that it's not always clearly defined, right? Sometimes composers like to play in both pawns at the same time. I think what we're going to say is it a modulation? Well, does it cadence? Does it cadence in the new key? And does it stay not in original key? after cadence. Let me explain what I mean by that. So we have a piece of music that seems to be in the key of 1, and then somewhere you get a 5 of 5, okay? And then you get a 5. Is it tonicization, or did we change to the dominant? Should we be saying we're in a different key or not? Well, it depends. Did this go 5 of 5 and then just keep going back in the key of the original one? Then it's just a tonicization. Even if it's expanded bubble, you know, did we ever get to a cadence where we go like, I'm in the key of 5 now, and then I go like 1, 6, 4, 5, 1, or 2, and then half cadence in 5 or something. If it actually cadences in this key right here, that's a good indicator that maybe we've changed key. Now, one last step, post cadence. Did it just say, I'm sorry, we're kidding, we're just actually going back to there again right away? If so, then you probably didn't modulate, okay? It's like we did an extended sort of haha made you look bubble, but then it immediately goes back right after to the key of 1, you know, then you didn't modulate, okay? However, a lot of times after this, you'll stay in this key that you just cadenced in, or you'll have a quick sequence or something that's unstable that will eventually take us back to 1, because that's the job right here, right? Unstable and then back to 1. Well, then we've changed key, right? Even if it changes key here and changes key again here, as long as we're not immediately after what we think could be a tonicization or a change of key, goes back to the original, then we'll call it a change of key. And like the book says, it's a gray zone. That's a good starting definition. Did we cadence in the new key that we changed to? And does post that cadence not immediately return to the original tonic key, home key of the piece? Probably a modulation. However, there'll be gray zones where we're like, I don't know. Okay. So, then the next thing that we talked about was the sandbox. You remember the sandbox? It says, well, where would we go to do these modulations? And the place that they liked to go to are, let's see, relative keys and closely related keys. The preamble on page 289 in this version of the book, it talks about key relationships, saying first off, changing from C sharp to D sharp major is just enharmonic respelling. So do or your note number 1 hasn't changed, ergo it's not even it's not a modulation, right? And then it says parallel keys like C major and C minor is also not a modulation, again because do didn't change. So it's only when the do note, number 1, the tonic note, changes, right? They called C major and minor change of mode or mode mixture. Okay, good. So where do we like to go? We like to go to relative keys, so like C major and A minor. Again, this is all repeat from the class, right? And this is what we call for modulation. And closely related keys. Closely related keys are ones that are 1 sharp or 1 flat away, right? And so here's where we start to make this diagram that we had. Now we drove a box around it. They've done it as a table, right? So if you make yourself a box like this and it's got 3 rows and 2 columns, and you say, I'm in the key of G major to start my piece, right? Then that's 1 sharp, right? Well, the related keys, closely related keys, are 1 less sharp and 1 more sharp. And so then you go, well, that's C major and D major, plus their relative minors, right? So A minor, and this is E minor, and this is B minor, right? However, if you want to be really technical, this isn't a close related key. This is a relative key, right? So we like to modulate to closely related keys and the relative key. And then they do a box for the minor so you can see that it's a little different right there, right? So they say, well, if I'm in C minor, that's 3 flats, and so the relative key is E flat major, 2 flats, like that, right? Okay. And we also talked about that if I start in a major key, almost always I'm going to go to my dominant. And if I start in a minor key, almost always I go to my dominant key or the relative major, okay? However, that's our first sort of grand movement away in a sort of common practice period, Bach to Brahms, right? But then after that, in the middle section, is probably where we will say, now let's go and play in our sandbox right there. So we look for this, it's telegraphed first, and then when we have a development or a working out section or something like that, or a bunch of sequences, then we go for places here, okay? All right, that's what this is. Now, I want to throw one other thing in here. This is going to muddy the waters a little bit. We start in our home key, right? We're going to hear, afterwards, we could go to this box as well, right? If there's an extended piece. It's also possible that it could be these plus their dominants as well. I know that's going to muddy the water a bit. Okay, but what it means to say is, let's say we started in the key of G, okay? So we're in the key of G, and then we go to our dominant, so then we're in the key of D. And now, in the middle of the piece, if it's a bigger piece, we're working things out and developing stuff. And let's go to the key of, B minor, okay, for a section. Now, we might jump from B minor to, I don't know, like E minor, and then C major, whatever. But it's also possible that while we're in B minor, we might be in B minor and briefly in F sharp minor, because that's like tonic and it's dominant. We might be briefly in the key of E minor plus its dominant, which is B. Oh, that's going to be the same, but like that. These areas can expand out and have little sections that are like in the 1 chord and in the 5 chord area of them. But this is home base, and these are satellite areas to go to. And you don't worry about calculating that. It's just if it happens, we want to be aware that that's a possibility. All right, so the most common way that we do this is with the pivot chord, right? We find chords that are common between the two, and that's the next section there. Before we jump into those exercises, let's just take a look at the kind of questions they're going to ask us to do. So I'm 290 in this edition, I think 7th edition, which is outdated, but it's cheap to buy, right? And let's take a look at what it says here. It says, well, name the relative key, right? So D major, B minor. If I'm in D sharp minor, F sharp major. And if you've forgotten how to do that, quickly, let me help you. So if I'm in D major and I want to know the relative minor, okay, and this, technically is review, but it's good review. Then I think of my D major scale, which is D to D with an F sharp and a C sharp, right? And I just go down to note number 6, and that's my relative minor. So I'll go down to C sharp. This is 8 or 1. That's 7, and then B. So it's B minor, right? That's how we do that. Go down a minor third or 2 steps of the scale, keep the same key signature. Now, if we do, let's do B, D sharp right there below it, right? And they say, what's the relative major? Well, here's where you do this. You want to know the relative major. You go up a minor third. And if you're going, well, I don't like calculating intervals. Well, spell yourself a not D sharp major chord. So D sharp minor will do. And that's D sharp, F sharp, and A sharp. And that's your relative major right there. Okay? So if you spell out the minor triad on the keynote and go to the third, that's your relative major. And that's what they're doing here. So let's just go through a few of these. Make a B flat minor triad, B flat, D flat, F. So this is relative key is D flat, right? F sharp minor, spell an F sharp minor chord, F sharp, A, C sharp. This is an A major, right? C flat major, go down 2 steps. Remember, everything's flat. So C, B, A flat, minor, and so on, okay? Try a couple of your own, and you have answers on page 612. We can just check a few of them. Don't need to do them all as long as you're very comfortable with that, okay? On the next page right here, it says, name all the closely related keys to the given key. This is where we make our box, right? We're gonna make our box. So let's see. So if I'm in B flat major, I make my box. put B flat right there, right? It's 2 flats, so I'm going to need a 3 flats, and I'm going to need a 1 flat. F, E flat, relative minor, and then relative minor. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I guess they're grouping the relative minor as one of their answers as well, because there's 5 spots, 1, 2, 3, 4. So G minor as well. So this one, that one, that one, that one, and that one, right? And use your upper and lower case. I'll pick another one down here. I'm in A sharp minor, okay? So I'm going to make another box like this. But now, and you haven't had as much practice, this is we'll start with sharps. Now remember, this is 7 sharps, right? And this is 6 sharps, and this is 8 sharps. That's impossible, right? We'll talk about that in a minute, all right? Remember, enharmonic equivalents count. They don't mean anything otherwise. So let's just start here for a minute. We'll do the easy ones. These are minors, these are majors. Well, C sharp major, yeah? Okay. And then 1 less. Well, if you're good at calculating this, that's fine, right? But if you don't know that in minor, you will. You will. We'll be practicing those. But notice that it's a 5th above, perfect 5th above, right? Or you can say, well, what's my 6 sharp major scale? And maybe you know what that is then. 6 sharps. Do we have a 6 sharp scale? Right? It'd be F sharp major, right? I think we just did that recently. But if you have to make this table quickly and it doesn't come to you because you're not as familiar with the minor scales, well, go off of the relative, right? Like that. And then I think I've done these backwards. Anyhow, it's fine. It's fine. D sharp. And then down here, it's a problem. Let me show you. Or you can just calculate by fifths, right? Have I done this right? I think so. A to C, D to F. Yeah, right. Circle of fifths going in this direction. Right? See how that works? Okay. Here, if I come up from here and I go G sharp and E sharp minor, these ones don't exist, right? They don't. There's no such thing as a G sharp major scale because that would be all sharps plus an F double sharp, and we don't do that. So you're going to have to enharmonically say, well, this is F minor and this is A flat major. And that's perfectly fine to do. Okay? All right. And then it asks you just to spot them, right? Identify. Are they enharmonically equivalent? Are they parallel? Are they relative? Are they close related or foreign? Enharmonic equivalent is like this one right here, A sharp and B flat minor, right? They're both minor. They're both the same starting note on the piano, but they're different names, okay? Parallel would be when you have, well, let's see. Parallel would be when you have two of the same note name right here, D minor and D major. Mode mixture, parallel, starts on the same note. Relative is when, well, it's relative major and minor. So let's find one of those, B flat and G right there, right? B flat major, G minor share the same key signature. And then close related are the ones that are one sharp or flat away, right? So let's take a look here. C flat has 7 flats. G flat has 6 flats. So those are close related. And foreign would be none of the above. It's not parallel. It's not enharmonically equivalent. It's not close related. And, you know, they have more than one flat or sharp away from each other. So, for instance, G major has 1 sharp. F minor has 4 flats. So these are foreign or not closely related. And that's what that is. Okay? All right. Common chord modulation. We're almost done this for what we need to. All right? We're just going to get to here, and then in class, or as an assignment, we'll be listening to these and doing some more analysis of the pieces. But we got to get to here. So, common chord analysis or common chord modulation is where you find a chord that's common between the two. We previewed that, and we've already done in class. 6 in one key can be 2 in the other, right? And we almost always go to related keys, closely related or relative, right? Or yeah, that's it. Or major or minor. And so the way that they advocate doing this is they say, write out, like let's say we want to go from B flat to the key of F. They say, write out all the possible chords for B flat, right? So B flat major, C, the two chords minor, minor, major, major, minor, and then half diminished. And then they say, write them out for F, but do them in the order of the B flat. So we're starting on B flat, so you can line them up and be equivalent. And then rename them down at the bottom. So for instance, in the key of B flat, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But if we start here, then it's a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3. We're starting on the same note. Okay, it's fine. And then you see one that's on the same actual starting pitch, like the exact same starting pitch, B flat, D, F, and G, and has the exact same quality. So for instance, this 2 chord and 5 chord here is not eligible because even though they start on the same note, their quality is different, right? So that doesn't count, right? Here, they don't start on the same note and their quality is not different, right? So couldn't be possible because you'd have to have something on E flat in both or something on E in both, and they'd both have to be the same key or same quality. Here, they start on the same note, but this is a minor chord and this is a diminished chord. And that's the big difference right there. Now, they're really math obsessed about this. They love to make this table because I think it's testable, right? Can you make this table? And I think it's thorough, right? Because you can see every single chord that's possible as a pivot chord modulation, right? I'm going to be honest, if you're going between tonics and dominants and relative majors and relative minors, usually there's patterns that composers use, like 6 equals 2 or 1 equals 4, and we'll see them in our actual music that we analyze when we get together in class, and you'll go like, well, yeah, do they ever use this 4 equals 3? Not so much, because 3 is an awkward chord to use. Anyhow. Or 1 and 2. You'll find that there are ones that are just better than others, that they get used more likely than others, and that's fine. But for our purposes, we'll do this. Just don't become all math obsessed, right? If you're going to write a piece of music, you're going to figure out the chords you want in your first melody, and then you're going to find an acceptable pivot chord. And I'll let you in a secret. The next chapter, they say, well, what if there's not a pivot chord that's acceptable? And the answer is just do it anyways. Right? Just change keys. It'll be fine. You're like, what could go wrong? So, but we'll do the stupid textbook sort of comprehensive trick that they want us, the hoop they want us to jump through. It will help you see like all the possibilities that are there, and so that's fine, right? How do we analyze it? Well, you take your pivot chord like they have up here, right? It's found in the music, and you pivot there, and you just draw this bracket. When you get to the pivot chord, you go boom, 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 and you say, I'm in the new key, and it's this. And then from here on out, you just think in the new key, like that, okay? And so they have, a lot of these examples down here as well, right? 1, 5, 1, 4, and then 4 equals 5 in the new key, and you're there. These are a little jarring to play, and we'll maybe go over them in class. I'm not at a piano right now, because it happens so quickly, right? That's all, right? By the way, you'll find that that most of these common chord modulations, if they're not in a chorale like this, happen like at the beginning or first half of the second phrase in a piece of music, because the first phrase establishes your themes and your key and things, and then after that it's like, okay, let's go, and so they change key. Okay, this thing right here, right, this spot has a special term. It's called point of modulation. All right, and then if you look over at the self-test, well, there's lots of analysis. We're going to do those together in class, actually. That's what we're going to do. But then if you look over here, they say find the pivot chord, right? So I'll do a couple of these, and then we'll call it good for today. Or make the common chord tables, right? So let's try this first. I'm in the key of B flat. Running out of cardboard papers, okay? And I go 1, 5, 1, 2, 5, 6, right? Now, So this is a B flat chord, and this is an F chord and a B flat chord, and this is a C minor chord, and this is an F chord, right? And then I do a deceptive progression and go to my G minor chord. That's a G minor chord. We need to know that, so you gotta be able to count that there, right? And then it says, oh, it's not 6, it's 2. So you have to say to yourself, if this is a 2 chord, what's my 1 chord, or what's the key? And the answer is F major. Not F minor, because then this would be a G diminished chord, right? It's 2, so it looks like it's major. And that's it right there. We've figured it out. And then it goes on in the key of F. So this is G minor, right? And this will be a C chord with the 7th, and then an F chord, then a C7, and then an F. And that's it. So you're just spot calculating. I'll do the next one. You can take a look at the answer. Try one and then take a look at the answers. If you're great at it, then maybe you can stop. If you're not so sure, then do the next one, check your answers. At that point, if you're still struggling, it may be because you're not calculating or quick at calculating chord steps or scale steps for the chords and what their qualities are. Let's do this one right here. I'll leave you to do that one on your own. D minor. So 1, good, that's a D minor chord, right? D minor. And then 5, 6, 5, a 4. Well, that just became a D dominant chord in first inversion. And then it's going to go to my 4 chord, which is G minor. And this is not part of this, right? And then I have a 5, right? Which is going to be my A7 chord, which is going to be an inversion right there. And then I have a 1, 6. So I go back to D minor, and it's in 1, 6 right there. This becomes 4 for the next key. I told you 1s equals 4s and 2s equal 6s and things like that, okay? We'll talk about why in class mechanically. So D minor is now not 1, but 4. So you have to ask yourself, if D minor is 4, right, what key am I in? And you just have to think backwards, okay? If D is 4, what's 1? Is it A? It'd be minor though, because this is a minor 4 chord. Yes. So you got to think about the quality of the key. So this is my D minor, and A is 4. Then it goes to a 1, 6, 4 passing chord, it looks like, of some kind. So that would be an A minor chord. And then this will be a B half diminished. And we're in the key of A minor, so this is E, this is A, and this is G sharp diminished, and that's there again, okay? And depending on what year is looking at, the current year that we're looking at this film, I just made this right now, you're doing worksheets to help you look at these and think of the chords quickly, right? And the correct qualities, and then of course spelling them as well, okay? And then here's this one here at the bottom, which goes over the page, is make the, the table and figure out which one of these are, common between them that could be pivot chord candidates. So here, they're actually asking you to write out, if I'm in the key of A flat, do your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chords. Don't worry about sevenths on them, right? But just the triads. And then, so we start on A flat, and then we're going to D flat. So we'll do the same thing in D flat, but we'll start listing with the A flat chord, which would be our 5 chord. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this was 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then circle the ones that have the same note exactly and the same quality exactly, right? Don't worry about these, that's writing, we'll talk about that later. All right, it's always nice then to look at your summary and make sure that you can understand what's being said here, right? The tonal shift is modulation, in other words, where do is, where your tonic note is, right? Within an individual movement, not a bunch of pieces or movements. And then tonicization, like 5 of or something like that, is a short modulation, shorter, just a bubble, right? And then it talks about enharmonic equivalents, parallel keys, mode changes, and then finally says relative keys and close related keys. And then if it's not these guys, then it's a foreign key, right? Or distant relation. And then it talks about common chord modulation. I'm just going to finish off with saying, where does this happen? Almost exclusively in like Baroque and classical and romantic music, in pieces that have more than one section, although it can still happen in the middle of those. And you're likely going to find them in the second part of the first section as we change from tonic to dominant or tonic to relative major if you're in minor as well. That's it, okay? And we will work on analysis and things like that later, and maybe even our own writing exercise too. We'll see how that goes. All right, see you guys at the next class.